head turns full circle, full circle, full circle. As your head turns full circle, full circle, full circle.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, my name's Tony Allwright. I've talked a few times at these Howth summits, always enjoy them. I'm an engineer, mechanical, not chemical. I wonder what I'll just call this talk. This is going to be about the climate and so forth. But I was a bit stuck, because this global warming stuff keeps changing. First it's cooling, then it's warming, there's climate change. Nowadays, apparently, we're into extreme weather events. Now we're in the 2010s. So that was all too difficult. So I just thought, well, why don't we just take food for climate thought? And I invite you to have a little thinking experiment with me over the next few minutes or so. What I've done, I've come up with a whole global thing, a number of questions that are fundamental to this whole climate change, global warming issue. Things like, is the planet in fact warming? Is it harmful? What role does CO2? We've already heard some of this, and you're going to get a bit of repetition. That's what I mean by non-coordination. What's the cost and so forth? And I will share with you both the conventional answer, but then I will pose a few alternative considerations. So we'll start with the first one. Is the planet warming unnaturally? And the standard answer is yes, but I would say yes, really. And Pat might be familiar with the charts up behind us. This is how the temperature, if we go back 2,500 years, we see constant temperature variations, constantly. And we mentioned a few of them. Roman warming, that was when the Romans were growing grapes in Scotland and making marvellous wine there. In Scotland, we had the miserable Dark Ages, the cold Dark Ages, the medieval warming, the Little Ice Age, when we were roasting chestnuts on an open fire on the frozen Thames, and probably here on the Liffey as well. I don't know, I haven't seen those paintings. And now, of course, at the end comes modern warming. So that's a long view, 2,500 years. Let's zoom in a little bit. This is the last 20 years. The last 20 years. Here is the temperature. Zigzagging up and down. And where is the trend? Rock solid. Rock solid. This is since 1997. And that is rock solid despite, as Pat also said, 13% increase in CO2 over that period from 360 to 400 odd parts per million. And then computer models way, way up. This is what the IPCC have been telling us for years. They're saying the temperature is supposed to be going up there. The temperature is disobedient, the temperature is constant. But this takes us, we're up to here, look, October. What happened after that? Because we've been hearing we've had the hottest summer ever. We had a great summer last summer. But they've been saying these are the hottest years forever. Yeah, kind of. Here's just the back end of that previous chart, and this is what happened after that. Okay? Diddly, up and down like this. And you see there was a big peak there. It's also coming down again. Arguably, it's too soon to say whether there is a trend now going up or indeed just a continuation of the straight line. But this is the very hot period of 2015, 16, 17. But that itself is easily explained. There was not only an El Nino in 2015, 16, but there was a super El Nino. So we had exaggerated effects. That shoved the temperature way up when it was all over, way down again. Okay, so that's how I would say, is the planet warming unnaturally? Think about it, is it? Okay, but let's pretend it is warming unnaturally. Well, is this harmful? That's the next question. Is it harmful? Well, yes, but not for everybody, not for everything. It's harmful for things like desert environments. They're already dry and arid. Perhaps the adjacent areas will become dry and arid as well, so that's bad. Low-lying coastal environments, Bangladesh. We've seen how poor people in the low-lying areas of Bangladesh suffer dreadfully when there's flooding and so forth. Even New York would go underwater if they didn't adapt for it, if you had this real global warming stuff. So harmful, yes, but also beneficial. Crops love heat. Crops love CO2. That's leading to more food and cheaper food with a warmer temperature. And how about this? Cold weather kills 20 times more people than hot weather. There was a huge study done recently. 74 million deaths. So what is deadly is the cold weather. So we raise the temperature. That's good for humanity. Fewer people are killed by low temperature. Okay, then there's the next one. Will it be harmful? Well, we'll say, yes, it will be harmful. When? That's a nice one. Depends who you talk to. Here's little predictions. Armageddon predicted by experts over and over again. It all started with Kyoto in 1998. They said, in 100 years' time, then we'll have Armageddon. But if we don't do it, but if we control our CO2, you know what we'll do? We will defer Armageddon by 6 years. That's what you get if you control CO2. That's what Kyoto said, and nobody's really denied it since. Then you had, these eminent gentlemen like Al Gore, July 08, he said, Armageddon in 10 years. The green line is today, by the way. This is another big climate chap. He said 8 years. Prince Charles, noted climatologist, he may say 1.5 years, but 1.5 years passed. No, I meant 8 years. That's passed as well. Jim Hansen, well, you can see it for itself. The most recent one, the BBC came up with a program just a month ago. They said it's going to be 12 years. And the IPCC has a time clock. This is great, time clock. You can look it up online. 15.8 years, then we get Armageddon. This stuff is not believable. Nobody knows. It's guesswork. Anyway, but we will pretend it is harmful. Harmful to whom? This is the issue. Who's going to be harmed? Well, the poor. Let's put it this way. It's the poor we care about. We don't care about the rich. The rich can look after themselves. They can buy air conditioning and go to different countries, and they can escape it all. They can manage it. So really the focus of all this stuff is saving the poor from the effects of climate change, not the rich. So the next question. We're onto the old CO2 thing. Is the temperature going up because of too much CO2? The standard answer is yes, CO2 is driving the temperature up. But is it the other way around? Or is it something else altogether? Here's a little chart. Now we're really going back in history, going back now. Geological time, we're 250,000 years, 250,000. The red is temperature over this period. The blue is CO2. And you know what? Don't they correlate very nicely? Just one awkward fact. The red curve, the temperature curve, is ahead of the CO2 by 800 years. So, according to this, there's no way that CO2 is driving temperature. It's more like temperature driving the CO2. And probably because of warmer oceans releasing CO2. Well, let's look at another little interesting correlation. This is a correlation of sunspot activity for the last 100 years approximately. The red line, sunspot activity. See how closely it tracks temperatures? So maybe it's sunspot activity which is driving temperatures. Certainly not CO2. But let's pretend it is CO2. And then the next question is the excessive CO2 caused by humans? Well, the answer to that is yes. But humans contribute something like 4% of CO2. And CO2 itself, something like 400 parts per million of percent. So when you say that all the CO2 in the world is 400, in the atmosphere, 400 parts per million, which is 0.04%, it's a trace element, well, not a trace compound in the atmosphere. And human CO2 is 10% of the trace. It's the trace of a trace. It still adds up to 6.5 gigatons, which sounds like a huge amount, except when you realize volcanoes produce more. Animal backsides of bacteria, they produce 150 compared to 6.5. Vegetation, oceans, there's loads more generators of CO2 than the puny little humans. We're only 6 billion. But anyway, let's pretend it is caused by humans. So the next thing is, can humans do anything to reduce this CO2? Well, yes, of course they can. The biggest single thing they could do is lay off the addictive fossil fuels, which means a cost-cutting living standards. It means going back decades, if not hundreds of years in human development. What would that be like? Well, just imagine that there was somewhere in the world an island, and on half of it, they stopped using fossil fuels, and on the other half, they continued. What might that look like? Well, it might look like Hispaniola, with the Dominican Republic here, using fossil fuels. And Haiti, because they have no money, they have very few fossil fuels, And so what they do, they cut down every tree that there is for healing, cooling, cooking and industry. 2 countries, 1 island, life and death differences. This is what cutting the CO2 does to you. The planet's greatest environmental threat is poverty, for example, Haiti, not affluence such as the Dominican Republic. The threat, once people reach a level of about $5,000 a year in average income, they start worrying about the environment. They start protecting the environment. Affluence is good for the environment. And what fuels, the main thing that fuels affluence, one of the major things is fossil fuels. Just a side statement, my background is the oil and gas industry. That doesn't change the fact of what I just said. Okay, but however, we will assume that humans do reduce their CO2. So the next question is, what is the effectiveness of that reduction? How effective is it going to be? Well, you know what? It's going to delay global warming. It's not going to stop it. It's not going to stop it. It's going to delay it. Originally, it was in 100 years' time, delayed by 6 years. I'm not quite sure what the latest figures are, but it's something in that order. So that's how effective it's going to be. And then here's the next one. So what's it going to cost? What's this kind of reduction going to cost? Well, the sums are in, the figures have been done over and over again, and we are talking about, in terms of money spent, income foregone and so forth, something in the order of $100 billion per year for 100 years, which is $10 trillion, which is 2% of world GDP. That's a shitload of money to get a benefit in a century's time. This is Kyoto, IPC, and the rest. These are not controversial figures. And then, of course, you talk about money. Whose money? You want to guess? Of course, it's taxpayers in rich countries. Everybody in this room, that's for sure. We're going to have to chuck in our share of the 10 trillion. Okay, so then the thing is, we'll assume that this all happens. So then the next question we need to ask ourselves, is the reduction in carbon dioxide, is it actually the most effective way of dealing with global warming? We can say it will deal with global warming, will happen. Is it the most effective way? Well, there are answers to that as well. Well, of course it's the most effective way, as long as you don't think of any other ways, and other ways are rarely discussed. For example, adaptation. And if you think, oh, we have a $10 trillion budget available for this stuff, how about simple things like building better storm drainage, better pumping capacities, flood barriers, like they have the one in the Thames, but much more widespread, relocating people higher up mountains, to higher land, air conditioning, all kinds of things. There are all kinds of things you can do to mitigate the effects of global warming and all the stuff that goes with it, if it happens. And of course, there's this big one here, reducing poverty through good governance, through capitalism, through free trade and things like that. This is the solution that the left absolutely hate. It's against all their strongest religious beliefs. But that's very, very powerful. Is reducing it the best way of spending $10 trillion? Is that the best way to do it? Well, once again, the standard answer would be, yeah, we've got to do it. And I'd say, really? How about spending some of it on adaptations like we touched on the previous slide? And here's this very interesting number. The UN and the World Bank have said for $200 billion, which by the way is just 2% of our budget, $200 billion, we could bring clean water and sanitation to every person on the planet, which would avoid something like 2 million deaths per year from various diseases like dysentery and so forth that arise because of lack of clean water and sanitation. Wow, that's quite a number to think about. So we said here, is reduction the best way to spend 10 trillion? Then the next question, well, when we say best, best for whom exactly? Well, once again, it's best for the poor. Obviously not for the rich. We don't care about the rich. It's the poor people that we have our concerns for. So then finally, the question is, okay, we reckon this is the best way to help the poor. So what do the would-be beneficiaries think about it? Do they agree? Do the poor agree this is the best way to spend the money? Are you crazy? We're going to ask them that. We're going to ask them, is that Is that what they want? Is that what they think is a good idea? We're never going to do that, because we know the answer before we even open our mouths. Here's a typical question. Do you want 6 years delay in global warming 100 years from now for the benefit of your great-great-grandchildren, or would you like clean water and sanitation today? That is a question that is never ever asked of the so-called beneficiaries of the whole global warming effort. So, that's the food for thought that I wanted to share with you. I'm not giving answers, I'm trying to give you something to think about. Okay,
Thanks a million, Tony.
thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Full circle, your head turns full circle, full circle, full circle.